So this presentation is about how fiat has been used to wage wars and how it hurts the people. We're going to start at the War of 1812, when the U.S. Treasury issued small denomination interest-bearing notes totaling 14 million by 1815, designed to circulate as currency, effectively acting as fiat. State banks expanded note insurance and suspended gold/silver payment in 1814, boosting the money supply from 56 million in 1811 to 130 million in 1815, an 131% increase. This monetized war debt to cap borrowing costs. But this had a negative effect, the effect on the purchasing power. Inflation surged. The cost of living rose 34% by 1814, peaking at 134% of 1811 levels. And the GDP deflator hit 123%. Purchasing power eroded as prices outpaced wages, with long-term bond rates climbing to 9.22%, straining households and contributing to post-war deflationary adjustments. Now let's go to the American Civil War. The Union issued greenbacks, unbacked legal tender notes totaling $450 million by 1865. Under the Legal Tender Act of 1862, these funded military spending without full gold backing, while the National Banking Act of 1863 allowed banks to issue notes backed by federal bonds, expanding the money supply from 554 million in 1860 to 1.4 billion in 1865, a 161% increase. The effects on the purchasing power: inflation doubled the cost of living to 196% of the levels of the 1860 levels by 1865, with a 96% rise from 1861 onward. Purchasing power halved. Soldiers paid $13 a month until 1864, lagged prices, hurting workers and creditors, while greenback depreciation in gold markets disrupted trade and savings. And now the Confederacy side, which was way worse. The Confederate government printed unbacked grayback notes, issuing billions in paper currency without commodity reserves, leading to hyperinflation as military costs escalated by war's end. Notes totaled over 1.5 billion. The effects on the purchasing power: extreme hyperinflation. Prices rose over 9,000% by 1865, rendering the currency worthless post-defeat. Purchasing power was obliterated, causing widespread poverty, food shortages, and economic collapse in the South. And that brings us to World War I. The Federal Reserve expanded the monetary base through its borrowing and buy program, discounting up to $2 billion in war bonds as collateral for banks and directly buying treasury debt. High-powered money rose 76% from 4.2 billion in 1916 to 7.4 billion in 1920. And the M2 money, the broad money supply, grew 63%. This monetized Liberty bonds to finance 74% of expenditures via debt. And the effects on the purchasing power: inflation drove cost of living to 209% of the 1913 levels, and by 1920, 109% rise from 1916. Oh, wow, I can't even fucking read. Wow, that's just crazy. With the GDP deflator at 197%, purchasing power eroded by over 50%. Fixed wages for soldiers and civilians lagged, leading to post war unrest and real losses on bonds. A $100 investment lost 50% in real value by 1920. And then again, Federal Reserve does the same exact thing, just a different name for it. In World War II, the Federal Reserve pegged interest rates to 0.0375% on the T-bills and bought bonds directly, acting as the buyer of last resort. High power money doubled from 23 billion in 1941 to 46 billion in 1948. An M2 money supply rose 137% in that time period. This financed 46% of expenditures via debt monetization, covering 10% directly through money growth. Effects on purchasing power. Despite price controls, inflation rise, cost of living 73% to 173% of 1939 levels by 1948. With the GDP deflator at 169%, purchasing power declined 40 to 50%. Post-war surges eroded savings. A $100 bond portfolio worth 70% of pre-war real value, hitting fixed income households hard. Whoops. Oh shit. Okay, well, now we're at the Vietnam War. I'm not sure what we missed. But the Federal Reserve again expanded the money under presidential pressure to keep rates low. Combining war spending with domestic programs, money supply grew steadily with high-powered money and M2 increasing amid deficits. Taxes covered some via a 1968 surtax, but monetary accommodation fueled excess growth. And the same exact effects happened again. It contributed to the Great Inflation. Consumer prices rose 50 to 60% by 1973. CPI to 173% of 1964 levels, persisting into the 1970s with peaks of over 10% annually. Purchasing power eroded through higher costs for essentials, reducing real wages and savings value for the middle class. The conclusion: these examples illustrate a pattern. Fiat expansion allowed governments to sustain prolonged conflicts without immediate full taxation, and every time it led to a hidden tax via inflation, disproportionately affecting lower income populations. And now all major currencies are pure fiat, amplifying this dynamic in modern times. This is theft. For them to go to war and not have to bear the financial responsibility for it. This is how they enrich themselves and their friends at the expense of us. And even when fiat was used not to wage wars, the overprinting of the money supply without any backing always led to the end of the fiat system.